Let's turn our attention to hurling. Tommy Walsh is with us this morning. Tommy, before we get into the weekend's hurling, a quick look back at some of the stories coming from last weekend's Camogie matches, in particular from Galway. Hopper McGrath and his family had a big day. I didn't realise that this was the legendary Michael Hopper McGrath who is in charge of the Sarsfields team.
It was, yeah, and it was a great story. That they lost the 17 and 18 finals to Slotneil. Slotneil were going for 4 in a row, Ger. No one has done it since the great Buffers Alley team in Wexford many years ago. So there was history, like they won their first Ulster title only a couple of years ago. I'd say it was the first on this great run that they've went on. So they're going for history. It looked like it was set up for them. They started poorly, Slotneil, and came back in the second half, and they were winning by a point with a couple of minutes, coming into injury time. And next minute, up steps Sarsfields. After losing 2 finals, heartbreak upon heartbreak. And as you said, Hopper McGrath had 4 daughters on it. 3 of his daughters were involved in the goal that won the game for him. And the youngest, Siobhan, put the ball in the back of the net, and we all seen the scenes after it. And yeah, sure, it is magic. Like I've often heard on your own road up in Galway, you'd hear the likes of Cyril Farrelly talking about the Hopper and all those great players from the late 80s and early 90s. And, you know, Hopper was one of them great players. And he went on, they actually won 2 in a row themselves. Senior club All-Irelands in 93 and 94, like Joe Cooney, Para Kelly, who I like. That was when I started really becoming interested in hurling, the 93 All-Ireland Kilkenny and Galway. Galway lost, but Para Kelly was still man of the match, a Sarsfields man. You know, Joe Cooney, Peter Cooney, Joe McGrath, like they're a great team at the time. They went on the year after and won the All-Ireland again. They beat Toomey Vara, that great Toomey Vara team that won so many Tipperary championships but couldn't get over the line. So Hopper then goes on, manages his own team, and they get beaten 2 club All-Irelands, and then when it looked like they were beaten again, up this step. So just a great day for club hurling again, and a magical story for the Sarsfields club.
Yeah, sensational. So Siobhan, I think, was the youngest. She's the one with the match-winning goal. She's only 19. Niamh was the centre-back and the captain. Orla scored 3 points, and Clodagh McGrath was the wing-back. So a big day for the McGrath family, and it does remind you just of how important individual families can be to a club.
Yeah, it does. And when you look through any, I suppose, the great club stories, usually there's a massive input from big, large families, because I suppose you take a normal guy or a normal girl, goes down to the field 2 or 3 times a week. But if you have a family of 4 and 5, you're training every day of the week, because you're out in the gardens from 4 years of age till you're probably 23 or 24 really playing games. So they probably had the benefit of training every day. And you go look at intensive training. The great Munster, they probably brought intensity into the rugby that time, and it was all about Paul O'Connell, and every training is so important. Like when you're out in the back garden, like tackling is for 2 hours, and you wouldn't even think about it. You don't think about fitness, you don't think about never giving up, you just do it. So yeah, listen, that's a great story. And especially after the heartbreak, to see him coming back, and up in Croker as well. And in fairness to Slotneil, like I was actually with the Slotneil girls a couple of months ago, and like their story is incredible as well, like where they came from. Like they're promoting the Irish language up there. They got their own bus. Like they do be down Kilkenny often, playing challenge matches against the Kilkenny teams, maybe the Kilkenny senior Camogie team, could be Thomastown, any of the teams. I'm sure they travel around the country. Woody Dominic McKinley is with him, the great Antrim player from the late 80s, 90s. So like Slotneil are to be commended as well. Like they didn't just beat a good team, they beat a great team, one of the best ever in the final. Yeah, and they're clearly raising the standard of the game itself. You were in the papers yesterday talking about playing to your 40. Are you still tipping away in the garden with the rest of your family? Are there like scratch matches that you guys are playing that are as savage as they were when you were kids? I know, sure, they all moved away, so I have to do it with my son now, but he doesn't really want to come out at the moment, so I'll have to wait for another couple of years. So no, we kind of don't do that anymore, in fairness. We gave it up about 2 or 3 years ago.
Recently as that. And when you're in training against your brothers, do you treat them a little bit harder than you would have done the rest of your teammates, because you can get away with stuff?
Yeah, like the only referee easy, like, and like Daddy used to come out as well, and like in our garden actually, you know, we had a good garden and the hurling garden, but the both of them were the front gardens. I don't know why we call one of them a good garden, because both of them were the very same. But we weren't allowed hurling the good garden anyway. We're still out the front, like the hurling garden. And in the hurling garden, the sideline was 3 bands of barbed wire. Imagine that, because like we had cattle in that time, and you know the electric fence wouldn't keep them out of the garden. So we you know, my uncle and my father put barbed wire when we were very young. So like, not alone were you adjusting trying to win the ball, you're trying to avoid the barbed wire as well. And we got rid of that in later years, but it was a basic game really. It didn't matter whether there was 2 lads, like my cousin Richard was down the road, Stephen Luby up the road, who's now a coach with us, under 7s. We had the Breens down below, Liam Breen, and like, you just came into the garden, and whether there's 2E there or whether there's 10E there, you made a match and you evened it up. So if there was one good lad, it might be one good lad versus 2 or 3 of, you know, they might be younger, there could be 5 or 6 years in the difference. And we tried to promote goals and points. So it was always either up to maybe, say, 8 points, 2 goals and 2 points, or 11 points, 3 goals and 2 points. And yeah, they were the days, like, but they're brilliant. And you refereed them fairly yourself, in fairness. But, you know, there was often fights and games probably finished. And what I used to find was, like, I was obviously the oldest. You might be 3 or 4 years older than some of the lads. And, like, if you won a game, replay. So you'd have to play him 2 minutes later until they beat you. But as soon as they beat you, they won't play again for 3 or 4 days. So you'd be left, you know, absolutely bulling for 3 or 4 days. But and then you got a chance to go again. But it was great old crack.
Yeah, it's making it sound like Wilder Fury, the rematch.
Did anyone ever go into the barbed wire?
Oh yeah, that was a badge of honour. You'd be delighted going around with a bit of blood trickling down your head. You're a tough man then.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like joyous times. Come here, let's talk about the weekend. And there was a point made in the papers yesterday, I think it was Martin Brownie, in fairness to him, was making the point that a load of teams have had a couple of pre-season games the week of Christmas and the week after. And then they've condensed the league season so much now that, what are we, at the start of March, that they're not going to be out now for 10 weeks. And it's not really the perfect build-up for a team who's preparing for championship.
Yeah, it isn't. You're right. I seen that Cork, I think, are out for, they're not playing now for 10 weeks. The only thing is, I found the last couple of years when the format of the championship changed, I thought we were going from just intense from January to the end of, say, the end of June, the middle of June. It was just so intense for players, management and supporters. So every game, because the league the last couple of years, you're afraid of getting relegated. So you always had your top team out. So every day was a massive day, like a championship day. Towards, I find this year, it's kind of lovely. The management are getting to throw out young fellas. Like, you take with the training, we all hear about the training guys are doing now, but if you're putting out your top team, we all know there's 37 or 38 on panels now at the moment. There's 7 or 8 or 10 guys getting no game, even though they're training like demons from January to September. They're getting no game. Whereas I think this new format, it's a little bit more relaxed. We're still getting big crowds, and it's kind of like the starter before the main course. The main course has come May and June for the championship. I think it's lovely. You're going in and you're not as worried about winning or losing. It's more about seeing a player that you'd like to, you know, will this lad be able to do it in the championship? You go back to the pub that night, or maybe back for dinner, back to the family, and you're talking about new players. So I find it's a much nicer way this year anyway. And then the likes of the Leashes and Westmeaths are getting to play against the top teams, but still with an eye on the Joe McDonagh Cups in the summer.
Maybe if it was moved a couple of weeks and there was more games a little bit later into March, that might make it easier for teams. Like, for example, what do Cork do now for the next 10 weeks?
Yeah, well, you see, we all wanted more games, okay, which is great for the starters, Ger. But I remember when we were training, there was often, we'll say, a 3-week gap. So it didn't matter whether you're on the team or not on the team. You had 2 weeks of hard training, which for us in Kilkenny at that time, it was always matches. So that's what you loved. So if you're, say, between 20 and 38 on the panel, what do you want? You want a chance to show yourself, prove yourself. You're sick of going to a match or sitting down the bench eating Jaffa cakes, doing everything the players are doing except for playing the game. So now these Cork players that maybe weren't playing, they're getting to play matches in training for the next couple of weeks. So I think it's a great time for the panel members. Okay, so actually you don't have any problems with how the season is working out in terms of how like you would prepare a team at this point. It's going to be fairly similar for everybody, bar a couple more competitive matches for the teams who are making it into the latter stages of the league. Yeah, and it gives you hunger as well, Jerry. We all know, like, hunger is so massive. And, like, even, like, we stopped hurling back in the 18th of January, and we were going back training, say, a week or two later, and, I was kind of, dreading it, kind of, the hunger wasn't there to go back. It was nearly like a chore. So I just said, listen, I'd like a few weeks off. I'll go back to 1st of March or that. And went back then a couple of days ago and just couldn't wait for training. So, like, it's amazing what a 2-week break or a 2-week change can do for a fella. So I think it'll do like if the intensity of the media, we all see we've podcasts now, we've radio shows, the Sunday game every Sunday for leagues. It's not just championship anymore, so very intense. So now they get to go away and do a bit of work behind the scenes for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, like on that kind of topic then, I wonder, are we kind of leaping to conclusions that perhaps don't exist when it comes to the hurling league? Because as you say, it's a nice time for these teams. Things are being experimented with very heavily, that we actually don't know what teams are going to line up and what players are actually going to make the breakthrough come the summer at the moment, because the consequence of relegation just doesn't exist for the top tier teams.
Yeah, I'd agree with some of that, Owen. What I would agree with, you wouldn't really be able to predict the form of teams at the moment because they're trying out so many different players. But what I would say is you can see players, individual players, that you'll be able to use come championship, because there's players stepping up there left, right and centre on their own. And no matter what you say, if a manager sees a guy doing it in a league game like that against the top team, he has to be in the back of his mind to play him come championship. The more you see of a guy playing well, the more chance you're going to give him when the big days come around. So, yeah, I wouldn't put any stake into the form of teams at the moment. But I would say players that are showing up now will get their chances.
The games this weekend, Limerick against Waterford in the Gaelic grounds, and Galway against Tip. I think Limerick at Waterford is Saturday evening and Galway Tip is Sunday afternoon. You'd like to see something from Waterford at this point, just to show that actually things are going okay for them?
Yeah, well, it's a repeat of last year's league final, Waterford and Limerick. When Limerick, they beat them convincingly, and I'd say they upset their championship season after, because everyone was delighted. Waterford were after coming, new season under Pádraig Fanning, got to a league final in Croke Park, maybe get over the line and to show good signs for the championship coming forward. And they were beaten well by Limerick. We had a magical goal by Aaron Galland that day. And so I think I put more emphasis on the character of this Waterford team as opposed to the results. I think the only time results will matter for this Waterford team is championship. We've seen it last year. They did well in the league, albeit they didn't win the league final, but beat Galway a couple of times and did quite well. It's all about finding players and form. So I think the Waterford team, we see it in the first game against Cork. They were, I think 2-1 or that went in the first couple of minutes, but they came back into the game, showed character, I wouldn't even talk about character, energy, showed confidence to get back and win that game. The last day against Tipperary, again, down to 13 men. I know Tipperary down to 14 men, but they were still a man down for most of that game. Showed character and nearly snuck it, against the All-Ireland champions. So Liam Cahill has come into that Watford set up with pedigree. Like, it's all about confidence. Liam Cahill has won minor All-Irelands, under 20 All-Irelands, under 21. He's a great man in his local club as well. So he's bringing confidence and he's a tough taskmaster. So I think for Waterford, it's more about building character, that when the first round of the championship comes, I think it's against Tipperary, below in Welsh Park possibly, and it's all about, that game.
For all the talk of the hurling league being pointless or results not mattering all that much, Tipperary Galway flies exactly in the face of that this weekend, Tommy. It's a match you'd imagine both teams will be going hammer and tongs at, and I would say it's a bigger game for Galway personally, given some of the questions being asked about this team at the start of the league.
Yeah, well, they're trying to find players, Galway. Shane O'Neill's in his first season, and he's very much like that. Galway team was kind of a settled team over the last couple of years. But generally, if Brian Concannon showed up well last week, he scored 1-2. He was thereabouts last year and the year before. So I think it's about finding players for him. He's young Cooney centre back. He's Fintan Burke from St Thomas's on the wing. So I definitely think he has spruced up that Galway team. We still have the Joe Canning to come back, and we still have Daithí Burke to come back. So I think the Galway thing is all about settling down that team now, finding players. So if they can win, it'll give Shane O'Neill another chance to see some of them younger players in a big game. Cathal Mannion is back out midfield again, playing out of his skin. So I think it is a big match. You're right on for Galway win, because it'll give Shane O'Neill another chance and he can become more familiar with his players. We saw John Kiley and Micheál O'Donoghue, their first years with their respective teams a couple of years ago. You know, it was just getting to know them, and they didn't really do much in that championship. And so it'd be nice, the more you get to see them, the more chance you have of maybe winning an All-Ireland with them.
Can I ask you about that? Because you mentioned there what happened to Waterford after last year's league final. And we've seen that with teams where another team crushes their spirit. And Brent Pope used to say that one of the things that separated the All Blacks was that they would never give a sucker an even break. And your great Kilkenny team, whenever Eddie Brennan got a chance early in the game, he wasn't tapping the ball over the bar to get his eye in. He was going straight for goal. It was like, we're going to kill you as soon as we can possibly kill you. Like, are there any of these league games where managers are thinking, we're going to go out, we're going to pick our best team, we're going to inflict maximum damage on the opposition because they're building, they're coming, there's young lads in the team, they need a bit of confidence. We're not going to get them into the championship this year with a catapult of a confidence win against us. We're going to crush them today. Is there ever any of that aspect going into these league matches?
It depends on your manager, I'd say, Ger, really. Like, he's usually the one leading the conversation. But I think that the modern way teams from every sport are looking at it is getting the best out of yourself and standards. That seems to be the common kind of denominator with everyone. It's from studying other sports and from studying great coaches. It's you know, focused on the process as opposed to the result. Like, I know with our team, like, you know, if you were playing a team that maybe you didn't like at the time, yeah, let's go out and beat them. But most often it was all about raising your standards, because if you let them slip, they could slip again the next day. I often heard Alex Ferguson talking about from Manchester United, like, if you start getting lazy in one match, you can do it again. So you have to cut it out, complacency. So, no, but then you have individual battles. You might be marking a player that might got the better of you the last there. You don't want them, you know, you could be marking them again in the summer, and you just want to make sure that you're getting the better of them. So I think it comes down to the individual and probably the individual managers as well on what way they're leading the conversation. But most of it, I think, is getting your place on the team and just winning that match.
Yeah, Tommy, there's one last thing in the Camogie that we want to talk about. Galtier with another one of the great stories in the, I think it was the intermediate of the junior match.
Yeah, and that was a great story, because I was down there last year. They lost last year's final by a point, and they were very much a young team down in Waterford, and they were heartbroken. So most of them run this secondary school team down there that won the Camogie schools final last year. So I went to them before that, and it was about a week or two after they lost the Club All-Ireland, and it was heartbreaking. Like, even going in, and I didn't know the girls from Adam. And it was a tough, you know, because you could see their faces. They probably didn't even want to be there. And, you know, then you start to follow them to see how they get on. And again, this year, they're playing St. Rhinus from Offaly, great Offaly club, and they're getting beaten again. And the 4th minute of injury time, they get the winning goal. And, you know, it was just a magical story again. It was just a light for them girls from Galtier as well, because it was just the year of coming back from heartbreak and getting over the line. And, you know, fair play to him, and it's a tremendous week, I'd say, for the Galtier girls. You
needed to get that story in, because you'd been with Slough-Neil and they'd lost in the last minute, and this one it's like you went down and they won in the last minute, so it all balances out.
Well, I wasn't with that team. I was with them after they lost last year. So send a message out there. Don't get me in to talk to your team.
Tommy, good stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, lads. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Tommy Walsh giving us some thoughts there this morning. Do you get asked into teams to give talks?
No. I really enjoyed the interview, though. I love that. I love listening to people who've obviously, you know, a huge player in his own right, but just you can tell the way he speaks about the game, the kind of detail, you know, obviously takes an interest, all levels of the game, not at the very top, what's happening further down there, the Camogie and club level, and, you know, well researched, but obviously loves it. You know, still loves being part of it.
It's completely authentic, yeah, exactly. 11 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. Some more football to come with Kenny and Phil Egan. John Duggan's going to join us in the studio next, though, for Virtual Insanity.